Buen día, buen tarde, buenas noches, mis amores, whatever time you happen to be joining me at. I'm so grateful that you are here with me today. Today's topic. What does war look like in the modern day and age? And what do weapons of war look like in the modern day and age? Now, quickly disclaimer before I get into today's topic. This is my channel, and I am choosing to make use of my channel in the ways that I deem fit to share information specifically. What you do with this information is not up to me, nor do I want to dictate what it is that you do with this information. My only goal, my main intention, is to provide you with the means to come up with your own decisions, to do your own research, and ultimately to have a basis to stand on when it comes to recognizing what your beliefs are and explaining that, I guess, just being very mindful instead of mindless of the ways that you consume media and media literacy. And yeah, now today's video is specifically going to be centralized around attention and how it is that attention/intention is being used as a weapon. It can also be used as a tool, of course, but our attention is ultimately being weaponized to aid in a cultural war, in a class war, or to shift so that we think it's a cultural war and not a class war, when in reality it is a class war. Again, I will be presenting my research and my evidence, so I will be reading off of some notes that I have in front of me sometimes from time to time, just so I have the direct quotes and everything like that. So here we go. Now, I began really noticing this pattern back in 2023, I'll say. Of course, it's been occurring since as early as 2016, 2012, but for me specifically, I started kind of hyper focusing on it, you can say, in 2023, specifically when there was this entire shift with the spiritual warfare, the New Earth, Old Earth paradigm, which I've spoken about in previous videos. If you would like to go and tune into that to hear more about that concept itself, I can link the videos here. And as far as spiritual warfare goes, there is a podcast episode where me and my friend Carla specifically delved into spiritual warfare in the modern day, and it is on her Patreon. So it is patreon.com/Carla Vargas, and the episode is called "A Conversation on Spiritual Warfare." So if you would like to tune into that, that is available on Patreon, and it is a conversation between me and a good friend of mine, Carla. Let's continue. Now, one of the greatest means of attention being weaponized that I have noticed, or that has stood out to me the most, has been through a show called Love Island USA. Now, many of you may have heard of it, but for those who haven't, Love Island USA is essentially a concept where these single adults, typically in their young 20s to 30-year-old range, so young adult, they enter this villa. It's a villa, so it's a large house. It's in Fiji, I believe, and I don't know if every season is like that, to be honest. So I just know it's in Fiji, and so it's framed as this kind of paradise in the perfect summer, and get really excited to go and to tune in. And it's also just an elongated show, so it's one of those shows where there's new episodes. I don't know if it's every day or every weekend or what the case is. I just know that it happens throughout the course of like weeks, days, weeks. And for that reason, obviously, this forces people to tune into it over an extended amount of time. Now, what does Love Island have to do with today's topic? Well, let me tell you after I take this bite. Hold on. I would like to start by pointing out some parallels that I've noticed between Love Island USA, the show, and this thing called Project Esther, which is written by the Heritage Foundation. Now, for those who may not be fully aware of what Project Esther or the Heritage Foundation is, the Heritage Foundation is comprised of 70% of Trump's current cabinet, which is tied to it, including JD Vance. So whether they be writers, editors, chiefs, donators, or receiving donations from the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is a major component of the current sitting president's cabinet. And again, I would like to note, though Trump has publicly come out and tried to distance himself from the Heritage Foundation and their initiatives, it is a conservative blueprint which was written by at least 144 people who worked for the Trump administration or in his campaign. So, within the framework of Project Esther, there is a $280 billion initiative specifically for something called marriage boot camps. Marriage boot camps is a plan to send unmarried adults to government-sponsored marriage boot camps, which would be occurring at local churches because it speaks about declining marriage rates. However, it ties declining marriage rates to civil rights era law and claims, quote, The disruptions to American family caused by bad policy in the 1960s were exacerbated by cultural upheavals that radically changed social norms around sex, sexuality, marriage, children, and gender roles. Second wave feminism and the sexual revolution promoted an individualistic, child free, marriage free sexual liberation that promised to lead an unparalleled era of consent based human happiness and fulfillment over the course of 60 years. And then it continues speaking about women's being childless by choice and it becoming normalized and divorce being normalized. And it also speaks about plans to rid of no fault divorce and starts blaming abortions on the mother, et cetera, et cetera. Now, alongside all of this, there are also plans to deport protesters, to ban DEI, and to enforce boot camps for single married women. Now, what does this mean for, let's say, women who do not want to marry a man? Women who are a part of the LGBTQ community, or women who just do not want kids or cannot have kids. What does all of this mean for them? Let's just sit on that for a second. Let's think about it realistically. So, these marriage boot camps, because we know the Heritage Foundation's entire goal, right, their mantra, you can say, is save the family, save America, right? Their entire goal is to bring back the man, woman, child family dynamic because they believe that this is the way to push a Christian nationalist nation. And this is the way to kind of save that patriarchal ideology, right? And to infuse it into our country, into our homes, into our personal, interpersonal relationships and lives. So, this marriage boot camp initiative, and what does this have to do with Love Island, right? Marriage boot camps is these single adults going into this boot camp, and the only way for them to graduate out of it is essentially to meet somebody, and the pipeline being they meet somebody, they get married, and then they have children. Love Island USA. Now, Love Island, of course, has this $100,000 at the end, prize money for whoever the winner is. And even though it seems harmless, it seems funny, it seems whatever, whatever it is that people like watching it to distract themselves for. We cannot deny the fact that there are some things about it that are just weird. Obviously, there's this financial freedom initiative that's being dangled in front of their face, right? And again, it is framed as a paradise. It's framed as the ultimate summer getaway. I did watch the first episode. So even in the first episode, right? This is one thing that I really noticed, where the first challenge, like the introduction to each other, I guess you could say, was all of these doors being put in front of these men and these women who, if the answer of their question was the same, then they kissed whoever was on the other side of the door, something along the lines of that. And what I noticed was at the very end, right, it was the host who said, if you're ready to have the best summer ever, if you're ready to make this the greatest summer of your life, stand behind this door. So obviously, all of the men, all of the women stood in front of that door, and you all get to make out with each other, woohoo. Everyone gets to make out with everybody. So it's kind of, to me, in my perspective, it's my opinion, this part, it kind of seems like a soft porn orgy that is being normalized and being put on national television, live streamed. Another thing I would like to point out is that these people are constantly being watched by cameras and constantly being recorded by mics, which may seem kind of dystopian in that environment, but then we look at our everyday waking reality in our environment, right? Where things like mass surveillance systems are just being implemented all over. We see things like Flock, we see things like Ring canceling their partnership with Flock that was supposed because obviously it just wasn't popular. Meta glasses being pushed by celebrities and things like that, so that these tools of mass surveillance are just being normalized and we're being watched constantly and our every move is being tracked. Our cars are being tracked and we're being recorded and documented even as I speak on this iPhone. Like nobody is really safe from that. And this is not to spread any anxiety or anything like that. It's just to make others aware of the reality that we are facing. And again, these things are somewhat being soft launched and normalized by shows such as Love Island. And not only that, obviously it is an elongated distraction from what? Let's talk about it. Now, obviously, there is just a lot of lust that exists within this show. Like, I noticed that in the very first episode, but from clips that I've seen people sharing specifically online, speaking about it, writing think pieces about it, and everything like that, it just seems a bit weird. Like, how why are these things being normalized, you know? And not only that, again, the first episode that I did watch, in their interviews, a lot of the women and a lot of the men were talking about, at the end of it, I just want to find the love of my life so we can get married, so we can have kids. That's my goal. I want to get married, I want to have kids. And there is nothing wrong with that at all, and I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with that. You know, if that is your choice, if that's how you want to lead your life, of course, that's perfectly well for you. All that I am saying is that I am seeing parallels between this initiative that the government is wanting to implement and has plans to implement, and that our current cabinet has ties to and are actively a part of writing, and mainstream media, and how it is that these concepts are already being soft launched and normalized. I'm just noticing a pattern and pointing it out to you. Now, what you do with this information and what you decide to do after this, nothing to do with me. However, I would just like to point it out. Now, at the same time as all of these things, what else has been happening? We know the NBA finals were occurring. You know, I'm speaking past tense, but I am going to speak about that briefly as well, just because I do live in San Antonio. And because of that, like, I was seeing a lot of, you know, the city's focus going into that, while at the same time, there were initiatives to push for the building of detention centers and meetings that were happening regarding that. And the push for data centers being built. Like, all of these things were happening at the same time, and it is intentionally happening like that, because what we know about, let's say, the NBA or the FIFA, the World Cup, because I'm going to be speaking about those two kind of interchangeably, these things are huge spectacles, and specifically they are an entertainment business that funnels into other businesses, specifically sports betting and alcohol businesses, right? So all of these things kind of funnel into each other and create this kind of environment where people are drawn to a screen for extended amounts of time over a long period of time. And though I will note, like, it was nice to see some bits of community coming from different games and things like that that I've seen. I think it's lovely for people to gather, but I think, if anything, again, my perspective is that we should be able to gather on the basis of multiple things and not just this, not just the fact that we all support the same country or anything like that. Because what I will say, as a Mexican American woman living here, that though I love seeing my community get together and celebrate and be happy, I should, I feel that it would be so beautiful to see that same amount of people show up for the community and show up for the culture when we are facing civil rights issues, let's say. So when our children and our um, women and mothers and fathers are being taken and stripped from their homes, stripped from their workplace, and placed in detention centers and separated and not giving legal aid, and are being raped and are being impregnated separate from anybody else in these facilities by these ICE officials, like, these are things that we should also be all collectively showing up for and taking action for, and not just when it's time to celebrate, and not just whenever it's time for all of us to, gathering on the basis of things outside of just distractions that are being put in front of us by oppressors, right? Because it's the bread and circus. It's literally bread and circus. You give them bread, you give them circus, they'll never revolt. Now, what are we going to do about that entire ideology, let's say, that's out there by these oppressors? Because again, at the same time that all of these are happening, it's not just happening with our communities. Again, as a Mexican, it's happening with Black, brown, indigenous communities that are being targeted. Essentially, if you're just not a white Christian proud born American, then you're a target. And again, that is not to push any anxiety, it's just to make you hyper aware of the situations that we are facing, because we have to be realistic about these things and we can't continue beating around the bush. It is way too important of a time for us to be taking action, because right now it is summertime, right? Everything is beautiful, the weather's beautiful, and we just have so many things we can be doing. We can go out to the lake, we can connect with nature, which is all very beautiful. All, like, we are just so fortunate to have that privilege. But again, we have to be very realistic with the fact that we are running out of water, running out of gas, and people are being stripped from their homes. And once the summer passes, it starts getting cold, and the days get shorter, and the power grid possibly goes down. What are we going to be left with? We are going to be left with the mess that is going to come from everything it is that's occurring while everyone is distracted, and we're going to be like, when did this happen and why is this happening? It's been happening this entire time. It's just that I'm not going to say we because I'm not going to speak for everybody, but there is just things that people are deliberately choosing to pay attention to over it until it starts affecting them. When it starts affecting them, then maybe they'll speak up, maybe they'll take action, and we would hope that they do, but I would hope that they do right now, for the fact that, again, my goal is only to make you aware that these things are already occurring, and what you do with that information is up to you. However, at least I'm doing my part and spreading the awareness that it is happening, and it's happening right now, and it's going to continue to happen. And all that we can do is learn how to connect with one another, in person, right? Outside of just social media and platforms that are gifted to us by oppressors, again, are not gifted, but that are there, that we interact with, right, in daily life. Just because, again, modern day and age, mass media is a tool of weaponry in the same way that attention is, and what it is that's being put on mass media outlets. So, connect with those around you, connect with nature, connect to your spirit. Tune out of the world of electronics and the digital age, the digital realm, and tune into something greater. Tap into your creativity and create more than you consume. That's a big one, is creating more than you consume. Do not let these things overwhelm you. Don't let them shut you down. If anything, use whatever emotions it is that comes up from hearing what it is that's happening, and educate yourself and take the initiative to build movements and to build safe spaces for people and to show up for your community, get to know them, and essentially just take action in your own way, in whatever way that is already revolutionary in itself, because any form of action, I believe at least, is impactful, some way, shape, or form. It's a ripple effect, right. It can be hard to face this overload of information, but when you start feeling overwhelmed, that's when you have to take more off of your plate and really reflect on yourself of, what can I do and what am I capable of doing? If you're not capable of doing much and you feel, overwhelmed, that's when you reach out to the people around you. Ask them to either hold you accountable, or just to let you speak and just to listen, or ask for their word and their perspective. Like, it's very healthy and it's okay for us. We are communal beings at heart. We thrive in tribes. Let's not forget that. It's in our nature. And there's so many things that exist that are trying to pin us against each other and separate us and divide us. And when we start opposing those systems and we start working together for the common goal of just recognizing our own nature and how it is that we are reflections of each other in so many ways. Like, no matter what divides us, I can be brown and you can be white and you can be black and you can be, and there's all of these things, right? And we're just in this giant melting pot. Well, how can we come together aside from the fact that you believe what you believe and I believe what I believe, but ultimately I hold space for you to express yourself. And we also have to recognize that it's okay for other people to not hold the same perspectives as us, if it's not harming us, to hold differing perspectives, because ultimately true community comes from holding space from people, for people who still have the room to grow, or still have things to learn, or may not be fully aware of things. Again, as long as you are doing your part, that is all that you should be concerned with, and never anybody else's belief systems and trying to manipulate them or anything like that, right? True community is rooted in seeing somebody's truest self and honoring the essence, because ultimately we are formed of the same essence. So war dissolves in the face of unity. And we know this, and we know that many factors exist that attempt to strip us of this truth and, again, pin us against each other and focus on the differences, but it is simply just not true. It's not. So before you get overwhelmed by, oh my gosh, there's this happening here, and there's something so beautiful, and there's something so ugly happening at the same time. Israel is bombing Lebanon, and then A$AP Rocky's butt crack comes out, and then there's money laundering and tax evasion and blah, 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 and then there's also my friend's birthday party that I have to show. Remember to breathe. Touch some water and put your feet in some grass. And I know that might sound very, privileged to say, and I don't deny that, of course. However, I believe that we cannot build from a place of scattered energy. And if we are out of alignment with ourselves and our creator, whatever you believe that to be for you, when we are out of alignment, there's not much that we can actually do. But grounding yourself means that you are able to assist in grounding those around you. And at the end of the day, we have to be here for each other. We literally, we have to. We don't have any other choice the way that I see it. And even though it might seem like we do now, there's going to come a point where you're going to need people by your side, and you're going to need the assistance, and you're going to need to come with these people and talk about what's actually going on. It's going to get to a point where it's just so in our face and so uncomfortable and weird that we are going to have to talk about it. Have to. And we're already at that point. We are, realistically, we are. Of course, there's still people that are going to choose not to, and that's okay. But again, that doesn't discredit the fact that it's coming. It's not already here for you. It will be eventually. Again, I am sending you love, sending you peace from wherever it is that you're tuning in from, whether it be inside these states or outside the divided states. I recognize the divinity in you, and I pray that you recognize it in yourself as well. Know that everything else outside of you is only a reflection of you and your creation, and community starts with wherever you are, and your vision for reality starts with your initiative to create it. Recognize that you are a creator and you are gifted this gift to create by the creator, so you are an extension of God. What you do with this truth is completely up to you in this life, but I send you love through your journey, through all that I've shared. Grateful. I'm very fortunate. Thank you.